السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. فاللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ولمشايخنا ولجميع المسلمين أجمعين. I ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make this gathering a beneficial one, to accept it from us. So in continuation with our lesson on fiqh, we will quickly go through the muraja'a of that which we covered last week, and that is that we did with regards to the sunnahs, or that which is liked when one is entering the lavatory. We mentioned that using water and that which we have in our days, instead of al-istijmar, instead of it being hajar, stone, we have tissues today nowadays. So that is of course wajib. Okay, that is wajib. We mentioned that is wajib. And that it is from the sunnah when you're entering the lavatory, or even if it's a place where you're out in the forest and there is no sort of, building, then it is from the sunnah to say, عند الإرادة, when you want to enter, before you enter, you say, Bismillah, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubthi wal-khaba'ith. So you protect yourself. Okay, you protect yourself. And we mentioned that many of the issues today from our sisters and brothers that they face with regards to being possessed and what have you, is due to the fact that they don't do the adhkar. So then after that we mentioned that when one has left the lavatory, what do they say? وَبَعْدَ الْخُرُوجِ مِنْهُ, i.e. meaning when one leaves the khala, the lavatory, they say غُفْرَانَكَ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ الَّذِي أَذْهَبَ عَنِّي الْأَذَى وَعَافَانِي. You're thanking Allah Azza wa Jalla for removing that which was difficult for you before you relieved yourself. And then we mentioned as well, it's mentioned here, the Musannif mentions, rahimahullah, that you cover your head. You cover your head. And the other one is that you use protection, i.e. meaning you have slippers on. And you enter, because Kan Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam yuhibbu at-tayammum. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to love doing things that had sharaf, that had honor or ikram with his right. Okay. As for that which is opposite, the likes of entering the lavatory, then he would leave with the right and enter with the left. Okay, which is the opposite of going into a masjid or wearing clothes and what have you. وَاعْتِمَادُهُ عَلَيْهَا الْيُمْنَى. And then afterwards, it's mentioned, the Musannif mentions here, that you should, if you are out in the forest, meaning you're not in your household or hotel or what have you, then what should you do? You should try your best to look for a place where no one can see you. And the meaning here of makan and rakhwin, the meaning here of the makan wa bu'd, to be far, is so that when you are relieving yourself, no one can see you. No one can see you. And also, the Musannif mentions here that you should try and seek for a place where if you are to urinate, that the urine won't splash back onto your clothing and onto your garments or onto your body. And what's the reason for it? We mentioned the reason. What's the benefit of that? What's your name, Akhi? Hassan, what's the benefit of you not having your urine or the najasa splash back onto you? You mentioned due to the fact that there will be a severe punishment in the grave for whom? For two people, and from those, barakallahu fikum, meaning he didn't used to clean himself, i.e. meaning he didn't take care when he was relieving himself. And then afterwards it's mentioned here that one should try their best, and this is from the sunnahs. It's not from the sunnahs. That it says here, وَمَسُ الذَّكَرْ بِالْيَدِ الْيُسْرَى, that when you are cleansing yourself and cleaning yourself, then what do? You use the left hand and not the right hand. And what do we mention that the left hand is called? I.e. that we should teach our children. The toilet hand. That's something that you should try your utmost best. That's something, ikhwani, that you should try your utmost best to teach your young children. Many of our children, younger age, when they go into the lavatory, i.e. the toilet, they don't even have the knowledge of how to relieve themselves and clean themselves. And it's important, as a Muslim, you're supposed to be clean. النظافة من الإيمان. Cleanliness is from the signs of Iman, signs of faith. And then afterwards, we mentioned that one should make sure that they have no signs, there's no qatarat, there's no drops of any sort of urine or any sort of najasa. And that which is makruh, what is makruh? What is disliked? Is that you enter the toilet with something that has the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An authentic hadith, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ينتزع الخاتم قبل دخوله بالخلاء. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he used to have his ring, and on the ring he'll take it off. Why? What was the reason that he'll take it off? Yes. It said Allah's name on it. So likewise, if one has a mushaf, try your best before you enter the lavatory to not go into the lavatory with your mushaf. Okay? To not go into the lavatory with your mushaf or anything that has Allah's name on it. And then the Musannif mentions here, وَكَلَامٌ فِيهِ بِلَا حَاجَةٍ, to speak inside the lavatory without a necessity, يعني no one has called you and there's no need, it is disliked عند الحنابلة. In the school of thought of the Hanabila, it is disliked to speak without any sort of reason. And an authentic narration where one of the companions gave salam to the Prophet ﷺ and he didn't reply. And of course we know that salam is wajib. So this is from the proof. And that when one goes into, before they use the lavatory, they make sure that their garments are lifted up. They make sure that when they use the lavatory, if they're out in the forest, their garments are lifted up, out of the way, or in the toilet, same thing, on the toilet seat, to make sure that there is no chance or possibility that the najasa will touch your garments. And it is also disliked to cleanse yourself, to clean yourself with your right hand. It is makruh to clean yourself with your right hand. And also the last point was istiqbal al-nayyirain, which is basically al-shams wal-qamar. Okay, in the Hanabila they see that in the Hanabila to not face towards the sun or the moon, but the hadith that comes afterwards, which we know the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam told the companions to not face the qibla, it defeats this specific qawl of the Hanabila. And from that we'll mention a point that we should know and realize, that with regards to the aqwal, the statements of the madahib al-arba'a, whether it's Hanabila, that which we're studying now, or any of the rest, we know that their qawl, as Imam Malik said, we mentioned in the beginning, كل يؤخذ بقول ويرد إلا صاحب هذا القبر. And he pointed to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said that each and every single person's statement is accepted and rejected. Okay, there is a means of you looking into the statement to see if it's correct or if it is not correct. Okay, but rather the person, and he pointed towards the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam's grave, and he said, except for this person, meaning the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? Because we blind follow the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the only one who we should blind follow without questioning. Why? Because of the fact, what's the reason, what's the proof from the Quran? Barakallahu fikum. Another proof, Barakallahu fikum. وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. The Prophet ﷺ doesn't utter from his desires, it's a revelation being revealed unto him. And the statement the other brother recited was that if you say that if you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then follow me, i.e. the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So with regards to that which is haram, the hurumat, that which is haram, it is haram for one to face the qibla. Okay? To face it this way or the opposite way when you are relieving yourself, i.e. when you are using a toilet. And due to the fact that the authentic narration where one of the companions mentioned, شَرِّقُوا وَغَرِّبُوا, try your utmost best to face towards the east or the west and not the north or the south. Not towards the qibla or opposite to the qibla. And also وَلُبْثُ فَوْقَ الْحَاجَةِ, to stay in the lavatory, the washroom, the toilet longer than needed, it is haram عند الحنابلة. It is haram عند الحنابلة. What's the reason? From the wisdom is due to the fact that your awrah is makshuf, that your awrah is, you're not covered. You're not covered. So therefore, for you to stay in the lavatory longer than what you actually need to do in there, whether it's having a shower, whether it's relieving yourself, it is haram عند الحنابلة because of the fact that your awrah is makshuf. And we know who are the people, who are the inhabitants of those kind of places? The jinn. So therefore, that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons due to the fact of those inhabitants that live there. And also because of the fact that your awrah is not covered. And from a Muslim is that they should have their awrah covered at all times. Okay? So going in there and staying there longer than needed, it is haram عند الحنابلة. And also, many people be surprised, but you find it nowadays, especially here in the West. وَلِعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, may Allah make it easy for us to reside amongst the Muslims, in the Muslim lands, that you find people urinating and defecating on the streets. And in the Hanabila it is haram. عند الحنابلة it is haram. What's the proof? The proof is the statement of the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم where he mentioned اتقوا اللاعنين الذي يتخلى في طريق الناس أو في ظلهم. And this hadith where the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم said, fear two types of things. يعني two types of things, that the one that does these things, these two things, then the curse is upon them. The curse is upon them. One of them is the one that relieves himself in the public, يعني meaning in the pathway of the people. And the other one is the one that does so in the shade of the other people, يعني meaning when the sun is out in the shade. And this here, يعني this specific thing, if one does so, then they're under the curse of the people. The people will curse them for doing such a thing. And this is not from the akhlaq of a Muslim. And the last point, that which is haram is mentioned here, is to do it under a tree, that which has fruits in it. Yani to do it under a fruitful tree, it is also, yani intentionally that is, intentionally, it is also haram عند الحنابلة. Okay, now we mention, inshallah, that which is liked. Can someone read for me, please? Does anyone have the text? In English or in Arabic, whichever one. Maybe in English because the brothers don't everyone understand Arabic. Just from where it says it is liked. Does anyone have the text? Find it, Khoni. 73. ويسن استجمار ثم استنجاء بماء. It is liked to use the rocks. You've got it? Yeah, you can read it. Can someone give him the mic? The brother's got it. Whatever, Arabic or English. Maybe English is better for the people.
Bismillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah ahsanallahu alaykum shaykhana. It is recommended to clean oneself via istijmar with stones and their like, and then with water. The opposite order is offensive. It is permissible to limit oneself to one of them, though in that the case of water is superior.
So here, barakallahu fik, so here, the Musannif is mentioning here, mustahabbat, yani that which is liked with regards to cleaning oneself. Yani in our days, that which we have is tissue. Okay, so we have mustahabbat, they're split into three categories. So he's going to read them and I'll explain them to you, inshallah, in three categories. Go on.
It is not permissible to clean oneself via istijmar, except by something pure, permissible to use, dry, and capable of cleaning the area. It is not permissible to clean oneself with dung, bones, food, even animal food, anything possessing sanctity, for example, books containing beneficial knowledge, or part of an animal when it is attached to the animal.
Barakallahu fikum. So here, look, ikhwani, write it down. There's three types, right? There's three different types. So the first one is that you do both. And that is better. I.e., when you clean yourself, you use water and tissue. Okay, when you clean yourself, you use water and tissue. That is what is better. When you clean yourself, you use water and tissue. That's istijmar and istinja. Okay, that's from the sunnah and that's what is liked in the Hanabila. And it's mentioned here, that which you should do first when you cleanse yourself and when you're cleaning yourself, whether it's urine or you've defecated, is that you start with water first. What's the reason? When they explain to the ulama, they say because of the fact that cleaning yourself with water is ablagh. It's better because of the fact that it actually cleanses and it purifies everything. That's the first type, okay? To use water first, but you do both. The second type is اختصار على الماء, okay? When you make اختصار على الماء, meaning you use just water. This is the second type that you can do. Yani there's 3 different ways of cleaning yourself. The first one is use water and tissue. Second way is you use just water. And using just water, it's mentioned here, أبلغ للتنظيف. أبلغ للتنظيف. That it's actually, you would make sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that you've cleaned everything. All the impurities will go with just water itself, if you use just water. Okay? Where if you compare it to using just tissue. And then the meaning is, because of the fact that it takes away عين النجاسة, يزيل عين النجاسة وأثره. That it takes away all impurities, yani the pinnacle parts of the impurities, whether it's poo, whether it's urine, it's taken away by water. And anything left, any traces as well, the water takes it away. However, as for using al-hajarat, or in our days that which have tissues, if one uses tissue, and you can see scientifically, and subhanAllah, many of the kuffar just recently, they've realized, they've come to their senses, that using just tissue doesn't take away all of the impurities. But alhamdulillah, 1400 years ago, our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us. That's why we know, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. Our religion is perfect. There's not a single trace of imperfection that you can find in al-Islam. The ulama, they mention, as for using tissue, maybe yes, it will clean off. Okay, maybe it will clean off certain impurities. However, there will still be traces of najasat, of impurities. Hence why the first point we mentioned is al-jami', using both water and tissue. The second type is just using water. As for the last one, and of course we know that because of the fact that it's better and you actually remove everything. As for the third type, then it is using just tissue. Okay, a question may ask, if I use just tissue, have I cleaned myself properly? Of course we know maybe yes, you may clean yourself, but that which is pure, that which is from the sunnah, is that you do that which the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam advised, which was to do al-jam'. You use water and then you use tissue. Is that clear, ikhwani? Any questions? Okay, moving forward. With regards to that which is not, with regards to that which is not liked, it says, وَلَا يَصِحْ استجمار إلا بطاهر مباح يابس. So here there's now conditions. There's now conditions that you can't do istijmar, يعني meaning you can't use tissue except for 3 conditions. Okay, except for 3 conditions. The first one is that it has to be pure. It has to be tahir. So you can't use something that has imperfection, that has impurities on it. You can't use something that has najas on it. Yani the tissue in itself has to be tahir, it has to be pure. That's the first one, that's the first condition. As for the second one, then it has to be mubah. It has to be something that is permissible to use. Who can give me an example of istijmar not being permissible? Stolen or what else? Huh? Before we get to that part. So for example, stolen. Okay, it has to be pure, it has to be mubah. We're talking about the tissue in itself. The tissue in itself, it has to be tahir. It has to make sure that before you use it, it's not dirty in itself. The tissue is not dirty. The second one, it has to be mubah. The example is that it's not stolen. As for the last one, what's the last one? It has to be yabis. It has to be yabis. The meaning of yabis is that it has to be dry. It has to be dry. And what that means is, an example is, who can give me an example of something that's not dry but it's a tissue in our day and age? Wipes. That's an example. using wipes in itself, it will not remove all of the impurities. If that makes sense, just understand what I'm saying here and what the Musannif is meaning. What he means is if you use something that is mablul, okay, muballal, yani mablul, something that's wet, then you've used water, meaning if you want to replace it with water, that's something else. If you don't have water, for example. But we're talking about you have water, you've used it, and you want to do istijmar. The Musannif mentions it has to be yabis, it has to be dry. Because of the fact that if you use something that's dirty, okay, you have an impurity. For example, you have an impurity, okay? You have poo. And you're trying to clean it, you're trying to remove this impurity by using something of wipes. When you're using wipes, it will make it more dirty, if that makes sense. It will make it more dirty. Does that make sense, Ikhwani? It looks like some people haven't. Yes, Mu'min. Barakallahu fiqh. It will make it more dirty. And exactly what I was about to say, the brother just said it just before me, Jazakallah khair. He says it will spread the najasa. Yani that, because of the fact that it's wet, it will spread the najasa. So therefore it has to be yabis. It has to be yabis. It has to be dry. And then afterwards, it's mentioned here, that which is haram. So this here are the conditions of using a tissue. That which is haram, from the hurumat of using a tissue, is that you can't use bones. As the brothers mentioned, what's the first one? Read the first one. What's the first one? The Shaykh that he mentions.
It is not permissible to clean oneself with dung.
With dung. The second one?
Bones.
Bones. What's the reason of the bones? Does anyone know the hadith? The food of the jinns. كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So that's another reason why you can't use it. The other one?
Food, including animal food.
Food, you can't use food to clean yourself. You don't have to even explain this, it's clear, ikhwani. The other one is something of the animals. Yani meaning if it's a leg of an animal or anything of the sort, you're not allowed to use that as a means of istijmar. Okay, then afterwards, the last point. Go on.
A condition for cleaning via istijmar is that the filth does not move beyond its typical location and that there be at least 3 clean wipes.
So here, the Musannif mentions that the condition is that the actual impurity, the najasa, has to come from the place of najasa. Okay? Now, the example of that, for example, as a man, when you urinate, it comes from your private part. And there's only one place it comes from your private part. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and ask Allah to save us all from illnesses and diseases and being tried, because of course we know some people can't. So say alhamdulillah. It's also another means of you, ikhwani, say alhamdulillah. There's so many blessings as a Muslim that you should realize just within your own body, just within the jism. فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. Allah is the most perfect with regards to creation. Okay? The Musannif mentions here that it has to come from its typical part of where that impurity comes out from. So if, for example, from the men, your private part, if it comes from there, that's why you're allowed to use the istijmar, meaning you're allowed to use tissue. However now, meaning في موضع العادة. Okay? خارج موضع العادة. If now, for example, let's just say, the urine comes from other than the typical part of where it comes from your private part. Here, the Hanabila, they say you can't use a tissue, but rather you have to use water. Is that clear? So that's the condition, that it has to come, mean the urine, or even when you defecate, either poo, if it comes from other than the part that is supposed to come from, the typical part, then you can't use tissue to clean that specific impurity. You have to use water. Okay, you have to use water. Next one, akhi, siwak. Now the Musannif is going to go into something else.
The toothstick and the other sunnahs of the body. Using toothsticks is recommended at all times except after the sun has reached its zenith for someone who is fasting. For that it is offensive.
Okay, what's the meaning of a siwak? The meaning of a siwak, ma'nahu al-oud. Okay, the actual oud tree, that's the meaning of siwak. Okay, the meaning of siwak, the meaning of it is al-oud. Okay, the actual wood. That's one meaning. The other one is the actual fi'l, the action. Okay, when someone is using a siwak, they call it a siwak as well, meaning the action is called siwak. Yani yastak. So the meaning, 2 meanings is that it means the oud and it means the actual action that the person is doing. That is siwak. And from here, the Musannif mentions that it is allowed to use it at all times. عند الحنابلة, except for one point, where you cannot, إلا, is when a person is fasting, okay, الصائم and بعد الزوال, which is after Dhuhr. So the two conditions that the Hanabila, they say that you can't use siwak, is you have to fulfill these two conditions. The first one is that you have to be fasting and after Dhuhr. That specific point after Dhuhr, when a person is fasting, in the Hanabila, you cannot use the siwak. Okay? You cannot use the siwak. Once again, this is their qawl. We're not saying it's haram. Just after Dhuhr, just that specific time, after Dhuhr. Okay? That when a person is fasting, they can't use the siwak in the Hanabila. إلا لصائم بعد الزوال. Okay? For yukra, that it is disliked. Okay? It's makruh to use a siwak when a person is fasting and after Dhuhr. ويتأكد عند صلاة ونحوها. Okay? And it is recommended, highly recommended to use the siwak, okay, before the salah. And we know the hadith of the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم أو كما قال لأمرتكم أن تستاكوا يعني بعد الوضوء وعند الصلاة. Okay, that he would have recommended and made it something where he highly recommended the people to actually use the siwak after making wudu and also after salah, except that he feared that people would take it as something that is wajib. So therefore he didn't. But here in the Hanabila, it is highly recommended. Highly recommended. Highly recommended. Just like Taraweeh, same thing. It's not wajib. Prophet ﷺ recommended it, hence why he didn't pray every single night, due to the fact that the people would take it as something that is wajib. But rather it is a sunnah. Next point, Akhi.
It is recommended to be...
Sorry, Afwan. The reason why the Hanabila, they say, the hadith, why they say that they use that you should not use the siwak when you're fasting, and specifically that time after zawal, is due to the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, أو كما قال لخلوف فم الصائم أطيب عند الله من ريح المسك. يعني that the actual smell of a person fasting is more beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal than the smell of misk. So they say that if one uses siwak, they take away this smell. Okay, that's the istidlal. That's what the proof that they use to say that one shouldn't use the siwak when they are fasting. Go ahead.
It is recommended to begin with the right side of the mouth when using it. Beginning with the right is also recommended during purification and in all of one's affairs. It is recommended to apply oil every other day, to apply kohol to each eye 3 times nightly, to look in the mirror, to use perfume, to remove pubic hair, to crop one's moustache, to pare one's nails, and to pluck armpit hair.
Barakallahu feekum. So here, just as a point of mention that we mentioned again, that it's not from something where, because there's two sides of things with regards to, ibadat and what have you, and other things as well, that when a person makes something of their opinion, for example, I hold the opinion, okay, that after salah, during salah, when I come up from ruku', that I place my hands back here on my chest. That's the opinion that I hold, according to proof. I hold the opinion that when I'm on the tashahhud al-awwal or al-akhir, I move my hand. I'm on the opinion that the takbirat only happens at certain times within the salah. I'm on all of these things that I could be upon the opinion of, it is not something that I should enforce upon someone else. And it's not something that I should tell someone else to do because so-and-so has said it. And likewise, so therefore, when you're forcing someone to blindly follow a specific shaykh and what have you, it shouldn't be done. Likewise, it shouldn't be the case where someone wants to speak about their religion and therefore I give them the pathway to speak about the religion without having any proof. And they just speak day and night. So you can't be extreme and then therefore you can't be lenient. And that's something that's bearing in mind is very important to understand, ikhwani. Most of the reason why a person gets put off the deen, in the West here specifically you find when they're young or whatever age, is that they've been enforced or they're hearing or someone is telling them they should do this and that because of so and so. And you find in the time of the Sahaba, you will find that many of them will say, قال الله قال الرسول. And then some of them will say, سمعت أبو بكر وعمر. And one of them will say, يعني أنا بين أظهركم أقول لكم قال الله قال الرسول تقول لي قال الصحابي. Due to the fact that at this time it was crucial for one to understand what we just mentioned here, that you find in the time of the companions many times they would quote the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal or the statement of the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam after that, after the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam's death, and then one of the tabi'in, one of the Sahaba will come and quote another companion. And he said that, how can you quote a companion when I'm telling you قال الله قال الرسول? So likewise, our deen is understanding the religion according to the Quran and the Sunnah upon the way that the Sahaba understood it. And likewise, same thing as well. It's not befitting for anyone to speak about the religion except with knowledge. What's the proof? Or I should say, what is the punishment? That's a better question. What's the punishment about speaking about the religion without proof? What's the punishment? It's a hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "O kama qal, man kadhaba alayya," and there's two narrations, muta'ammidan, whoever lies upon me intentionally. The other narration mentions whoever lies upon me, i.e. meaning intentionally or not intentionally. فَلْيَتَبَوَّأْ مَقْعَدَهُ مِنَ النَّارِ, then let him get his seat ready in the hellfire. So that upon hearing that, many of the companions, if you read into their biographies, they wouldn't mention a hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, fearing they would say it wrong for a period of time. And this should be our case, ikhwani, that we don't speak about the religion of al-Islam except if you have a proof. Anything else, then do so. So going back onto the point, it's mentioned here, read it again please. Yeah, it's mentioned here that with regards to that which is from the Sunnah, and these are Sunnahs using the siwak or not using the siwak, that one should start with the right hand. Min bab al-ikram, something that's honorable going into the masjid and what have you, start with the right hand. The other thing is that it is also from the Sunnah, and one should try to do, it's liked, it's encouraged to oil their beard, to look nice. That's the meaning here, ikhwani. One should try their best. As a Muslim, you shouldn't look as if you just woke up from your bed. You should try your best to look nice, presentable. That's from the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that which he did from time to time. Also to use kuhl onto the eyes, to apply kuhl, and also to look into the mirror, i.e. the meaning of looking into the mirror, that you make sure that there are no faults in your face. But it doesn't mean you stay there 30 minutes, half an hour, an hour. So, you find sometimes some of the ikhwa, they do this. They look in the mirror for half an hour. You're a man. Of course, no problem, but everything in moderation. Also, it is from the Sunnah as well, it's mentioned to make sure that you use something of, that you smell nice. And shay'in fa shay'an yudhkar, ikhwan, is something that we should mention, because we're in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many times you find the brothers, they come into the masjid, young or old, and they don't care how they smell. They just come. And if they leave their house, yalla, hayya nusalli. They don't care how they smell. And you're going into the masjid, number one, you're going to harm the person praying next to you, brother or sister. Number two, you're harming the angels. In authentic narration, that which the people can smell, the angels can smell. So you're harming the angels. The house of Allah Azza wa Jal. Why is it that when you go to an interview, when you go for your wedding, when you go somewhere special on occasion, you make sure you look the best? When you come to the house of Allah Azza wa Jal, like you just woke up from your bed. Some people, they come with their pajamas. You're going to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you come to the house of Allah Azza wa Jal, take some sort of care. You're going to listen to the Quran, pray salah, read Quran. So make sure when you leave your household, you do that which the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do. And that is that he used to smell nice. From the narrations you read of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that before he would even walk and get into the place that he was getting, the masajid or what have you, people can smell him from a mile away. And that was the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also it is from the Sunnah to remove pubic hairs. From the Sunnah to do so. Okay, what's the specific time frame? 40 days, barakallahu fikum. This is also a message as well, a reminder. Islam calls to what? To cleanliness. Alhamdulillah. And also from the ikhwa that have mustache, don't grow it. From the Sunnah to what? Taqsir, to take part from it, to make sure that you differentiate from the Yahud. And you should grow your beard. Once again, from the Sunnah. Who knows the authentic narration regarding the beard? Let me see if anyone here knows the narration. No, Arabic and English. What's the benefit of it? Okay, ikhwan, let me ask another question. Is it just in the time of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam that it was only our ummah that were told and encouraged to grow the beard? From the Quran, what's the proof? Huh? Huh? Barakallahu fikum, Harun. So you know the story. And also another authentic narration that the men have been beautified, with what? With the beard. Meaning that a means of beautification in a man is his lihya. So let your lihya go forth. It's a means of what? Beauty. And also it's mentioned here to cut from the nails. To cut from the nails. That one should try the utmost best to what? To make sure that they take from their nails and also take from the hairs under the armpits. These are all from the sunan. The next one, akhi. No, of course, this is everyone, of course. Barakallahu fiik. The brother mentioned a very important point. The trend nowadays of the akhawat, our sisters, hadahunna Allah, may Allah guide them and guide us all, the women folk, that they grow their nails. Most of it you can see tashabbuh bil kuffar. Think about it, I'll give you just something that, once again, la haya fi deen. This is because we're on the bab of what? Of purification. Think about, and sometimes you see even some brothers growing the pinky. All of these stuff that people do, come on, ikhwani. You're like a girl growing a pinky, doesn't make sense. All of these stuff that you do, when you do it, ask yourself, why am I doing it? What's the reason? Who am I trying to, imitate? That's one thing you should ask yourself as a Muslim. Who am I trying to imitate? Growing a nail on the pinky, it looks disgusting. And then from the sisters that grow their nails, okay, now, akramakumullah, it's time for you to use the lavatory, oh sister. You've gone in, you've defecated. How are you cleaning your poo when you've got nails? How is that possible? Tasawwur, honestly, just picture it. How is that possible? All of that najasat, all of those najasat is going into your nails. Once again, Islam what? Preaches and calls us and reminds us. It reminds us to be people of purification, people that are clean. All of these things make us better Muslims. The next one, akhi.
It is offensive to shave part of the head, to pluck white hairs, or to pierce a young boy's ears.
Barakallahu fiik. This is something that's important. Qazi', okay? That's something that's a big trend now. Shade, having your hair, having a shade. Some of the ikhwa, mashallah, they love it. It's a big trend. Now, I'm on the opinion that it's not allowed. La yajuz. To take from one part of your hair and to leave from the other part. And this is not my statement. Kama qala Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's mentioned in authentic narration, إحلقوها كلها أو اتركوها كلها. That's an authentic narration where the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, grow all of it, meaning have it all one level, or shave all of it. Okay, some people, they look for fatwa. I know some brothers, they love to do fatwa shopping. And sisters. It's something that's a big trend in this community in the West. People love doing fatwa shopping. Anything that doesn't suit your desires, be someone of truth. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. O you who believe, fear Allah and be with the truthful one. If you can't accept something, just say that you can't accept it. But now to look for something like riba, for example, and what have you, all of these things, people look for a means of something being accepted so that they can do it. Here it's mentioned in this narration that you should leave all of it or take all of it. Now, this is something that, once again, if you see that it's correct and you have your proof, that's something else. But if you have something to go against this hadith, then you have something to go against this hadith. But something that's even more dangerous, you see our shabab, many of the youth in this day and age that we live in today, they do certain hairstyles after they've seen it from a kafir, specific hairstyles. Now that's going to go into something that's even more scary, which is tashabbuh bil kuffar. Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum. Whoever imitates a group of people, then they will be classified as to be from those group of people. So beware of what you're doing before you're doing, even your children. And this is a message to the fathers and the mothers. You're kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ul an ra'iyati. Each and every single one of you is responsible, and you'll be questionable about what you let your children do when they're under your authority and under your care. So here it's mentioned that it is not, it's dislike here. It's mentioned here that it is disliked to leave part and to take a part. Okay? The shade and what have you. It is disliked. That's what we mentioned here, that it is disliked. And also it is disliked to take from our uncles and our elders that have grey hairs. It is disliked to take from it. And the Messenger ﷺ mentioned in authentic narration, هَذَا نُورٌ لِلْمُسْلِمِ. This is from the lights of the Muslims. So therefore don't take from it. Don't take from it. And the other one is, which I hope inshallah many of us stay away from, especially from our young community and those that have children, is to pierce the children's ears, i.e. the boys. Of course we know for the girls it's allowed. It's yajuz, it's allowed. As for the boys piercing the ears, this once again, it's not something that it is a need to beautify them, because as a boy you don't do this. So it's mentioned here that it is also something that it is disliked. The next one, akhi.
It is obligatory to circumcise males and females by removing the skin above the private parts. It is recommended not to take all of it, soon after reaching maturity when there is safety from harm.
So this one here is an important point regarding circumcision. Of course we know that it's mentioned here, the Musannif mentions male and female. But then he mentions here at the end, and many of the Hanabila, their qawl is that only for the male, should only be for the male. And it's mentioned here that ma'a amn ad-darar, that it doesn't cause harm. And of course we know that many of the times, back home specifically in certain cultures and what have you, they do it to the females and it causes great harm. And it causes them it puts them in predicaments in the future in terms of conceiving. So here it's mentioned if it doesn't cause harm. And that which you find that the other opinion is that it's only for the males. It's only for the males. Just to clarify, circumcision should be done only for the males, i.e. the boys. And it says here,
it is recommended to do so before maturity. It is offensive to do so from birth up to and including the 7th day.
So here it's mentioned that it is from the sunnah to do it before puberty, okay, before maturity. And that it is disliked in the Hanabila to do it from day 1 when the baby is born until day 7. Okay? From day 1 until day 7 it is disliked. The next one. So just to mention, Ikhwani, it's from the Sunnah, and of course for the reverts, those that accept Islam afterwards, it is also from the Sunnah to do so. As we know, does anyone know the hadith of when Ibrahim alayhi salam has done his circumcision? Anyone know? How old was he? I'm pretty sure we set homework last week, Mu'min. I just can't remember, subhanAllah, qaddarallah ma shafal. We set homework last week for this week. What was the homework? Did anyone do it? Okay, khalas. What was the age of Ibrahim alayhi salam? Barakallahu feekum. It's mentioned here it was 80 plus when he, and of course we know that which he used as well, the hadith, and he was 80 plus, the age of 80 plus. The next one, akhi.
Obligatory and recommended acts of ablution.
Now this is the main point, ikhwan. This is the main lesson. Now we're beginning the lesson. This is the beginning of the lesson. All that which came before is in order for you to understand and get a gist of what it is and what it entails fiqh. Now we're entering the chapter of wudu. Akhi, can you read them? What's the difference? The homework. The brother mentioned 5. The first one, haram. Explain it. So if you do so, to do something haram, you earn a sin. If you leave off haram, you earn a reward. Next one, makruh, disliked. Something that is disliked. We just mentioned a couple of things that are disliked. Explain it. Okay, so if you leave it off, something that's disliked, makruh. Okay, if you leave it off, then you get rewarded for it. If you do it, are you sinful? No. So that's the difference between makruh and haram. Is that clear? Just to save time, we're not going to write it down, but we'll do it next lesson, inshallah. Remind me to do the next lesson, we'll write it down. So the first one is haram. If you do it, you earn a sin. If you leave it off, you earn a reward. Okay? And another authentic narration, the one that has the intention of doing haram, thinks about doing it, and then leaves it off, he gets rewarded for it. That's the proof. Okay? As for the one that does it, they get one sin written on them. And then the next one is disliked, makruh. If you leave it off, you get rewarded. An example of makruh, that which we mentioned. Now the brother's going into a different, something different, which is we mentioned something. I'm talking about akhi, that which we discussed. Nothing outside. So in the Hanabila, if you do siwak when you're fasting, after dhuhr, then it is disliked. So if you do it, you're not sinful. But if you leave it off, عند الحنابلة, يعني in their opinion, if you leave it off, you get rewarded. Next one. Mubah. What does mubah mean? Okay, but what's the reward for it? Something that's mubah. Something that's is accepted. Okay, mubah is something that's accepted. Explain it. Okay, that's mubah. And then the last one. So how many you mentioned there? Okay, yeah, third one. What's the fourth one? Mustahab, something that's recommended. Mustahab is recommended. If you do it, what happens? And if you leave it, you don't get reward. So the opposite of makruh, mustahab, is opposite of makruh. And the last one, halal, which is if you do it, you get rewarded. If you leave it off, Okay, who can give me an example? Okay, from that example, yes. Okay, that example, yes. It's halal, but okay, we won't get into the intricates. For example, nikah, what is it? Halal. But can it be wajib? Can it be wajib? Yes, that is. How long left until the adhan? So these are the five things. Let's get into it. Is it time now? Inshallah, we'll stop for the adhan.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. In continuation with regards to wudu,
أحسن الله إليك. Obligatory and recommended acts of ablution. The obligatory acts of ablution are 6. Washing the face, including rinsing the mouth and nostrils. Washing the arms and feet, including the elbows and ankles. Wiping all of the head, including the ears. Ordering the limbs as Allah mentioned them, and consecutiveness.
Barakallahu fikum. So in this part we mentioned and explained wudu. What's the meaning of wudu? The meaning of wudu is to use water, يعني it has to be pure. The water has to be pure. استعمال الماء الطهور. So the water has to be pure. That's the first condition. The first condition of wudu, that before you make wudu, the water has to be pure. استعمال الماء الطهور في الأعضاء الأربعة. okay, on the 4 different limbs. What's the 4 different limbs? The face, okay. What else? The hands until here. What else? The hair and the feet. Barakallahu fikum. في الأعضاء الأربعة, so that's the second condition. The first one is that it has to be pure, and the second condition is that it has to be on the different limbs, that which Allah has mentioned in the Quran, على وجه المخصوص, upon a specific type of way. What's the proof in the Quran regarding wudu? In Surah Al-Ma'idah. Every Muslim should know this. What's the proof from the Quran, from Surah Al-Ma'idah, regarding wudu? As a Muslim, you should know the proof of why you make wudu. You meet a non-Muslim and they say to you, I see all the time Muslims make ablution. What's the reason? You should be able to answer them, yes. Huh? No, what's the proof from the Quran? Yes. Barakallah. What's your name? How old are you, Muhammad? Muhammad's 15-year-old has told us the answers. Ikhwani, it should be shameful for all of us that don't know the proof. As a Muslim, certain basic things, every Muslim should know. So this is from the proofs. This is from the proof that a person should make wudu. And of course, the specific way, like I mentioned, number 1, it can't be an impurity. You can't make wudu with something that's impure. It has to be pure. That's the first thing. And it has to be upon the different limbs. And it has to be a certain way. Okay, now here the Musannaf mentions furud al-wudu. The different types of the furud, i.e. that which is mandatory, there are 6. Furud is also known as arkan. Okay? Furud and arkan is the same thing. Okay? Furud and arkan are the same thing. What's the difference between the two of that which is wajib and that which is a rukun? An obligation is wajib. What's a rukun? A rukun is a pillar. What's the difference between the two? What's the difference between a pillar and an obligation? Huh? Barakallahu feekum. He mentioned if you forget a rukun, then that wudu is not valid. If you forget a rukun in salah, for example, you forgot to say Fatiha in salah, your salah is not accepted. Whether you did it by accident or was done on purpose, your salah is not accepted. A wajib, you forgot to do tashahhud al-awwal, which is wajib. It's not a rukun, tashahhud al-awwal. What happens? You have to do sujood al-sahw. Does that make sense? That's the difference between the two. If you forget something of the wajibat, then your action is still accepted, whether it's wudu or whether it's salah. But if you forget a rukun, then it is not accepted. Barakallahu fikum akhi. And then afterwards, they mentioned the 6. We mentioned the 6, and they are
number 1, washing the face, including rinsing the mouth and nostrils.
So the first one is washing the face, okay, including the mouth and nostrils. So here, washing the face, we mentioned the proof. فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. Okay, and that, from the Hanabila, they mentioned that washing your nostrils and inside your mouth is included within that specific part, yani that specific first step that you're doing. Okay, that's included within that specific rukun. That's also included within the rukun, yani al-madmada wal-istinshaq. Okay.
Number 2 and 3, washing the arms and feet, including the elbows and ankles.
So this one as well, washing the hand. يَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ. Marafiq is up to here. So the meaning of ila in the Arabic language means including it as well. So you don't just wash here, but rather you wash beyond it. Yani meaning you wash the actual elbow beyond it. That's the meaning here. And of course, then afterwards is mentioned here, washing the hair, i.e. meaning with one, as you wash the head. And rijlain, okay, where do you wash your feet up until? Above the ankles. Inshallah, when we finish this and we get to the sifat, the description of wudu, we do the actual practical, we'll do the practical steps, step by step of actually making wudu. Because many Muslims, they make wudu. Unfortunately, as Muslims, we make wudu, but we don't know how we're making wudu. We're not doing it according to the way the Prophet ﷺ made wudu. And there was a man who came and he made wudu, and he came to the Messenger ﷺ, and he had, it was literally the size of a dirham at the time of that which the water didn't touch. And the Messenger ﷺ says, go back and make wudu because you didn't make wudu properly. So let's say, for example, you make wudu, just example, you make wudu, and then you make it up until here. And all of this part You haven't touched water, water hasn't touched. Is your wudu accepted? Your wudu is not accepted. But as a Muslim, when you make it, you could be on the rush, on the go, at work and what have you, and you just think, let me just make it. That's not correct. That's why I mentioned earlier, Ikhwani, everything to do with your religion, you have to make sure you do it properly. It doesn't take much to study the things that are wajib for that which you need to do to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that put you into existence. So always make sure anything to do with your religion, you try your utmost best to fulfill and to do. And the next one. So then afterwards,
Number 4, wiping all of the head, including the ears.
so you do that, of course, including your ears. The next one.
Number 5, ordering the limbs as Allah mentioned them.
So then afterwards he mentioned at-tartib. What's the reason he mentions at-tartib? Yani the order. Because Allah Azza wa Jalla in the ayah says, فَاغْسِلُوا وَوُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ. Yani it mentions it in order. So therefore as a Muslim, when you make wudu, you go according to the order Allah Azza wa Jalla has mentioned. Yani you go in order. And then the last one,
And number 6, consecutiveness.
consecutiveness, al-muwalat. What does that mean? Does muwalat means that when you make wudu, you don't make wudu with your hands and then you wash your mouth and then you go and you have, some food, talk to some friends, cup of tea, coffee, make some phone calls, watch TV, and then you come back. La. It means that you do it consecutively. For example, you've made wudu, and what's the dhabit? Just to explain, and we'll conclude this note. We'll conclude on this note. It means that you don't wash one limb and then you leave it until the other limb, that which you washed, is dry, and then you move on. So you've washed your hands. Before you move on, your hands still have to be wet as you're washing your mouth. So on and so forth. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. And inshallah we'll continue next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.